Welcome back to Generative AI and the Delivery of Legal Services. Today we're going to talk about legal AI tools and their use cases. First, why use a legal AI tool versus a general purpose platform? Then, some criteria for evaluating legal AI tools, followed by use cases, and finally, AI as a second mind. So why use legal AI tools versus general purpose platforms like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini? Well, there's at least 4 considerations. The first one is data privacy and security. When it comes to a legal AI provider, and I'll call a provider a company that provides a legal AI copilot or agent, typically they understand that providing services to lawyers and within the legal industry requires adherence to strict data privacy and security standards. And for that reason, they've usually spent a lot of time making sure that they do comply and that they use data encryption, security, and ensure the privacy of the information that's transmitted to them. If it's a general platform, there's usually a lack of legal-specific customization. Now, it may be that the generalized data that a model like GPT-4o is trained on includes legal information, but it is of a general nature, and as we've seen from past incidents, it's led to hallucination because it's dealing with extrapolation, not interpolation. So one way to dial that in is you provide the AI with legal specific use cases, data, formatting, and that's what legal AI does to get a much better and reliable response. Limited support and accountability is typically true of the larger providers. Try to get somebody on the phone at OpenAI, it's not going to happen. With a legal AI provider, they're usually smaller companies and they're much more responsive to support requests. Integration with existing legal tech ecosystem. Naturally, because legal AI software becomes more valuable to its end users if it integrates with their existing systems, if it can integrate with Microsoft Office apps or Google apps or any other content management system or knowledge management system, or even a Zapier, it's much more valuable. So legal AI vendors have typically taken time to integrate with those systems to make it much stickier for you to stay with them. And you don't get that kind of integration usually with the more general purpose platforms. So criteria for evaluating legal AI tools is related. You want to ask questions about data security and confidentiality. How are they actually handling that? When they say that the data is secure, number one, is any of it used for training? Would be one question to ask. Second, what kind of security measures do they take? Are they using encryption at rest? Are they using encryption in transit to protect data that's submitted to them? Do they share your data with anyone else? And if they do, what are the terms of service for that third party? Domain-specific accuracy. So as I mentioned before, by using legal case law, by using legal documents, by providing secondary materials as part of the training of a legal AI, it could be much more specific as to the domain in which you practice. And even more so if it can provide jurisdiction-specific information. Ethical and regulatory compliance. Naturally, legal AI companies understand that this is important to the attorneys that use their systems and have taken steps to comply with state bar ethics rules and regulations that affect the market. Explainability and customization. So questions you might ask about that are, does the legal AI vendor provide background about the pipeline that it uses to process information? Is it able to customize the responses more specifically to the workflow that you have as an attorney? Finally, cost scalability and vendor reliability. Questions to ask about that: how long have they been around? What are the costs involved month to month? Right now, legal AI vendors vary widely in terms of the pricing. There has been some consolidation and mergers where smaller legal AI companies have been acquired by larger ones like Thomson Reuters, and so the cost tends to go up. Scalability is if you start with a small amount of data, maybe everything's fine in terms of cost, but if you decide to transfer all of your law firm files into the system, how does that affect costs, and are the responses just as reliable when that happens? So these are criteria to think about when you're looking at any of these specific legal AI solutions. So let's talk about some of them. There's quite a number. This is just a very limited sampling, but the ones I want to talk to you about, for example, the use case of document drafting and contract review. Spellbook was early on into the legal AI field, and it integrates perfectly within Microsoft Word as this widget on the right-hand side. And so when you're actually, as lawyers do, work mostly within Microsoft Word, working on the contract, you can be asking questions about the contract. You could actually be giving Spellbook directions about what to revise, where you select the provision on the left-hand side, like here for late payment, and then you ask it to make it more customer friendly, or if you ask it to be more strict in its application. You can also upload playbooks, which maybe for a specific client, they have specific requirements of what they want to see or what they don't want to see within a contract. And Spellbook can run a check to give you insight as to whether or not the contract you're working on is compliant with that or not. So suggesting contract language, detecting aggressive terms, and also giving suggestions, listing missing clauses and definitions as per a playbook that would identify them, even suggesting negotiation tactics, and finally, you could perform a little legal research while you're working it. Gavel is a bit different. So Gavel is really interesting. It is a document automation system, and they've added a generative AI layer to it, which makes it easier to set up a form. So instead of having to manually identify each field that is to be filled out within a form, Gavel uses generative AI to identify all of those fields and to automatically create fields within its system that are linked back and mapped to those fill in the blanks. Gavel's been around for a while. It's an extremely powerful system, and there are some websites that provide direct to consumer solutions that are running on top of Gavel. So document automation is key. Workflow plus document logic, because you could connect the document automation to a series of steps that you would take within your office, and you get to define that and customize it. Client intake, because it does have a portal connected to it, so the client can actually log into their account and access the documents that have been prepared for them. It allows a lawyer to actually take the step of productizing a service. Now, what does that mean? That means that you take something like drafting a simple will, putting it within the Gavel system so that someone could just answer a few questions and have the will actually prepared for them, but put it behind a paywall so that they have to pay to get the final product. So that's productizing a service. It disintermediates the lawyer from small services like that, but at the same time allows you to make money off of that smaller service at a smaller price point. You could integrate payments, and the AI-enabled onboarding is what I referred to earlier about making document setup simple. Another use case is litigation and e-discovery. And so in that, we have ClearBrief. And so ClearBrief is really great at taking, let's say, a deposition transcript and finding citations within it, creating timelines and chronologies, and helping you to prepare your case for trial. It can actually create exhibits based off of raw documents that you have, where you want to synthesize certain information together, like let's say relevant medical records, and provide citations to the original source material. So it can create this timeline. It's also a hyperlinked timeline, which is extremely helpful. where you link back to the original source material from the timeline. They have a feature that they added where you could spot fake cases. So you just put in the citation and lets you know, is it real or is it not real? You could generate a facts section and hyperlinked citation within a brief from ClearBrief, and it can create an instant table of authorities and hyperlinks and exhibits. So extremely helpful for someone who's a litigator. Another one that's also helpful in this regard is AI.law. So AI.law is a platform that provides essential services to help a litigator, for example, drafting a complaint, answering discovery, drafting an answer to a complaint, and additional tasks like that are basic, meat and potatoes tasks that litigators engage in. So drafting a lawsuit, answering a lawsuit, responding to discovery, analyzing medical records so that it could actually pull out relevant and helpful medical bills and put them together within an exhibit, finding data and documents, summarizing deposition transcripts. That is something that ClearBrief does as well, but AI.law also does that, where you can pull out significant facts from a deposition transcript or upload a couple and then compare them to each other as to whether or not there's any conflicts or discrepancies in the deposition that was provided. Research and case analysis is another use case. Co-counsel is a heavy hitter in this area, bought out by Thomson Reuters. You can search a database, which is where you provide it with a number of different documents, and then you can ask a question that's queried against all of the documents at once. You can review documents and contracts, you can draft and also summarize. So case law research, draft legal memos, and co-counsel is actually quite good about drawing through case law, statutes, and secondary materials, especially now that it's part of Thomson Reuters, in answering a question and providing citations to all of the authorities that it got the information from. You can review documents with it, prepare for a deposition, search a database of documents, and create timelines. VLEX is another legal research platform, one that doesn't get talked about as much, but VLEX actually has an interesting differentiator. It has more of an international reach in terms of the legal authorities. So if you wanted to, for example, compare US case law to the UK, because maybe you have an international practice and you want to use UK cases as persuasive authority, VLEX has many, many jurisdictions worldwide built into it. But that's not the only reason you would use it for its global database. You could also get help in building an argument through its system, extracting legal claims and key facts from documents, summarizing documents, and building timelines. So you'll see there's a lot of repetition in the overlap between different platforms and applications, but each of them tends to have their own unique twist, like VLEX with International. LawDroid, we have Copilot, which essentially provides a few things. One is a Swiss Army knife of different functions that are AI functions that could be performed for the lawyer. Importantly, we've removed the need for them to learn how to engineer the prompt. They simply need to click a button to draft an email or a letter, for example. It asks a series of follow-up questions to get all the context needed to draft that email or letter, and then prepares a professional letter on their behalf. You could also generate images, create content for a blog, for example, and the documents feature here allows you to summarize documents, ask questions, and extract arguments. Motion analysis. So I want to show you an example of motion analysis within Copilot. This is an early version of Copilot, but it's interesting to see how this works firsthand. So you upload a document. In this case, we're uploading a motion for judgment notwithstanding the verdict, which is where a party seeks to overturn the verdict and get a new trial. And we're going to extract arguments. So just with the click of a button, we don't have to prompt engineer it. We just tell it to extract the arguments from this motion. And you can see that the principal arguments it identifies are juror misconduct, failure to meet burden of proof, that the jury verdict was erroneous, and gives a short explanation for the first argument about juror misconduct. And so on the left side, we're searching through this to see, is this real or is this a hallucination? And we can see that, in fact, there is a juror misconduct argument made. And that the second argument about burden of proof is also grounded in truth. And that the third argument, yes, is also there. So it tracks one-to-one, and the reason why it's doing a good job and also provides a summary in the conclusion there is because it's connected directly to the document. And you see here that you could actually create counter arguments by just pushing a button. It creates counter arguments to the arguments that it just extracted, as you can see here. Now I'd point out that these counter arguments are entirely factual, so it's not presenting any legal precedent to oppose the original argument. That's still for you to do yourself. And we do have a basic case law research function where you can do that. So let's take a look at the legal research. This is also an early version, but I think, especially for law students, it's interesting because you can actually brief a case through the LawDroid system. So you get a ranked list of cases. You can preview the cases to see why they came up on your search and find which case is most relevant for you. You can also read the case the old-fashioned way if you wish to. And briefing a case is the fun part here. We've actually added a few more functions since this video, but here you can see that it briefs the case, provides the facts, a factual summary, then the procedural history of the case, the issues, and everything that you would find within a case brief. And so what it's doing in the background is running a series of prompts asking questions of the case and synthesizing those answers into a briefing of the case. And then you can ask follow-up questions. For example, who is the judge that decided this case? And you can get an answer on the fly. Some additional things that you could do with that is you could ask it hypothetical questions that it could answer using the case precedent as the rule of law. Finally, client communications and case management is another function where you can use legal AI. And this is one example from LawDroid, our second product called LawDroid Builder. The first before was LawDroid Copilot. But this shows a workflow that you can create so that a bot can ask a potential new client questions when they visit an attorney's website. And all of this is automated so that there's no need for a human in the loop. It grabs contact information to land that potential new client, put them into a case management system like Clio, for example, as a lead, and then allows you to follow up without the need to have human staff dedicated to live chat. They also can be given the opportunity to ask a question about a legal issue. In this case, it's Texas law, and they're looking for help about getting a divorce. And you can see here that using generative AI, it has queried a database of information about divorce in Texas and provided a detailed answer about that. It's also possible to set up agents within LawDroid and other systems, but this is from LawDroid Builder. You can create a generative AI bot, a lead capture bot like you just saw, or one that helps automate documents. Clio recently released its Clio Duo, which is another bot that you can upload documents, and you guessed it, you can ask questions, summarize, and ask it to rewrite. So it's a great way of analyzing and reviewing documents. Now the value add to this, which you're seeing, there's been a lot over the past few months of legal software that already exists, adding an AI layer on top of their existing software, just like this, and making their existing software a lot more useful and valuable. The last piece I want to touch on is using AI as a second mind. So Professor Ethan Mollick talks about this as co-intelligence. And the idea is that you're not necessarily using the AI to create the thing, you're actually using it to improve your thought process. So the actual way you reason to get there. And so this is how you might do it. You can use it to help you generate ideas. In the legal context, brainstorm potential defenses or potential arguments. One way I use ChatGPT Advanced voice mode sometimes is like, I'll be on a walk with my dog and I talk to it about different ideas that I have. And it helps to clarify those ideas. And also I could go back and forth with it to try to refine the ideas and make them from a very rough idea into one that's much more useful. So stress testing those arguments. An AI could role play, and it could play devil's advocate. It could play the role of a neutral fact finder and ask you questions from different perspectives that you may not have thought of. And lastly here, let me get out of the way, you can visualize complex situations. So it actually helps you to see the information and data by visualizing it through diagrams. And we touched on that a little bit by using Claude to create charts to break down complex information into tables so that we can better understand how different features relate to each other. So with all of these three things combined, you can use AI as a second mind to help you create better work product, not just to create the work product for you. So to recap, we talked about why use legal AI tools versus the general purpose ones, the criteria for evaluating legal AI tools, what the use cases are, and using AI as a second mind. So I hope with that, it's opened your mind to thinking of how you might take advantage of these legal AI tools when you go out there to practice. Thank you so much. See you next time.